Welcome, folks. Welcome to our first kickoff video in our series called 5 Minutes for Healing. My name is Rick Goodwin, and I'm with Men in Healing Psychotherapy for Men. And our topic today, our first topic to kick off the series, is called self-compassion. And that may seem a little unusual that we would start with a topic like that. Often people think of self-compassion as the end result of a process of recovery and healing. We're going to suggest that perhaps it's our first consideration in this journey. So in terms of defining self-compassion, we need to look at its core elements of what it's all about. And the first one that comes to mind certainly is the notion of self-kindness. Now, this is talking about a very different relationship we need to develop with ourselves, as so often folks who've experienced past pain, past wounds, are harsh with themselves, are their own worst judges, and the standards are next to impossible. So now we're talking about a reverse stance, one embracing this notion of kindness. Secondly, for self-compassion to occur, we've got to hold connection with others. Now, this may be connection that we can read about in other people's stories. There could be compassion and finding others with like experience. This may be developing relationships where there's sufficient amount of trust to tell one's story with. This connection is critical because so often in the lives of many men, it's the lives of isolation, and for self-compassion to work, we need to hold connection with others. Thirdly, we need to become curious about ourselves. Let's take an example of holding a difficult emotion. Well, what is that emotion all about? Can we watch it? Can we become curious about, oh, I'm wondering why I'm feeling this way now versus, before. What came up now for it? Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what more there is to that. And the more we can become mindful of our thought patterns and curious about our emotional states, then we don't suffer the risk of being our pain. Because no one is their emotions. Emotions live very closely to us, and yet we need to develop that space between the two so that curiosity can allow for understanding as well as compassion. So the big question, of course, is how can we find self-compassion? How we can develop in that, how we can nurture that in our lives. And following is some suggestions in terms of this pursuit. The first thing is to really acknowledge what's going on for yourself. And when it comes to difficult emotions, first of all, you got to acknowledge that, you are in pain. You can't do much without that basic acknowledgement. Once we recognize we may be in pain, then we've got to give a proper word for that emotion. We need to label that feeling. And I'm going to suggest it's important to say it out loud. And as we say it out loud, once we've got the accurate label, I'm feeling lost. I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling hopeless. Then by even saying those words, we can find that space between ourselves and that emotion, say that hopelessness, to get curious and stay with that curiosity. What are you picking up? What are you noticing in your body? What are you noticing in your heart? What are the parallel thoughts that are going on? And then now expand that curiosity. What just happened beforehand that led me to experience this feeling? And again, keep with that curiosity, keep with that thinking mind. Because remember, you are not your emotions. It's an experience It's a process. It's a wave that goes through you, but will not last. So curiosity. Now, all of this requires practice. We just don't do a quick workshop on self-compassion and have that nailed for life. So this is a daily, regular practice, watching how we talk to ourselves, monitoring that self-talk. Reminding yourself you are not the only one in pain in this world. So look for others who are also in your shoes, that are also in pain, in difficulty, possibly in suffering, and yet are taking strides to changing that. Be mindful of your distress, that you are not your distress, and ultimately practice compassionate self-care in whatever way that speaks to you, whether it be going out for a run or some exercise, being with a good friend, being in nature, being attentive to the food you put in your body, attentive to your sleep patterns. All this is practicing self-care. Lastly, it reminds me of a book my kids had when they were small about friendships and how we have different types of friends, and some of us have a lot of friends and some of us have fewer friends. And the last page of that book said, and don't forget to be your own best friend. And if you can get that one done, shift your relationship to yourself to being your best friend, then trauma recovery, the healing journey is just around the corner. So thanks for joining us today. And we invite you to stay tuned for our next video in the series of Men and Recovery. And lastly, don't forget to practice being your own best friend. Until then.